Welcome, guests, family, members of the Council on Aging, and a special welcome to Representative Keiko Oral. Thank you for coming to our presentation. My name is Nancy Cuniff, and I lead a writing group that meets here every Monday morning. The group has a long and productive history. Formed in September of 1996 and led by Lakeville resident Jane Rando, it has been active for nearly 20 years. Until this beautiful facility was built, they met in the old police station under crowded conditions. They called themselves The Studio back then and published an anthology, The Comet's Tale. 10 years ago, when Jane left to teach creative writing at Bridgewater University, the group needed a leader. No one wanted the job. Afraid that the group would dissolve, I volunteered. It was a scary proposition. Even though I loved to read and had majored in English, I was shy. The last thing I have ever expected to do was to lead a writing group. Inspired by the beautiful rural surroundings, we recently renamed ourselves the Loon Pond Creative Writers. We strive to write weekly and read our work during our meetings. We have published 3 anthologies, Absolutely Right, Word by Word, and our newest, Storytellers. Several books, poems, and short stories by our members have also been published. Some of our work is displayed at the back of the room. Our membership is constantly evolving. We have had as many as 14 members, as few as 5. We come from surrounding towns, Middleborough, Hanover, Pembroke, Berkeley, Taunton, and Lakeville. Our life experiences and writing background vary. Before retirement, our members held various positions: teacher, accountant, homemaker, handyman, programmer, photographer, bookkeeper, artist, and fireman/policeman. Most are seniors, but age is not a prerequisite. One of us is 90, but I'm not telling who. Despite our diverse backgrounds, we have a common interest: writing. For some, it is a hobby. For others, like myself, a passion. Why do we write? If I posed this question to our members today, their replies would differ. We write to inform, to record, to communicate. We write to influence people's opinions or implement change, to express our creativity, our thoughts, and our feelings. We write because it is healing. We write because it's fun. We write because we have a story to tell, because we seek the beauty and truth in our lives. We write because we always wanted to, and because we finally have the time to. Some of us write because we are compelled to. We write because writing is our God-given gift. Writing is our legacy, a key to the past, and a door to the future. But our words need to be heard and read. What if you spent hours building a house that no one ever lived in, or making a meal that no one ever tasted? Granted, you would still get a feeling of accomplishment, but some of the joy would be missing. So that's why we're here. So you can hear our stories and poems, and of course to make some extra money for the COA by selling a few books. And now I present to you a sampling of our works. Marge Whitaker will begin with a piece from her memoir, Make Good Memories.
Hope everybody can see me over the top. I'd like to start my piece with a few words by Elizabeth Akers Allen. Backward, go backward, O time in thy flight. Make me a child again, just for tonight. After a visit from my daughter and her return to her home in New Hampshire, I found myself remembering a time in my life when we were all thinking about what time meant to us. What does home mean? As I sat there thinking, I remembered something my brother told me when he returned home from World War II. You know, I was pretty cocky when I left to go in the service. I wanted to get away from home. I didn't want the old man telling me what to do. I wanted to see the world. He paused. I sat quietly waiting, knowing somehow that he was reliving some bad memories. After a while, he went on. Marge, you never know what home means until you've lived through hell. We fought so that our loved ones at home wouldn't have to know that kind of hell. Another pause. What I came to know took me all these last years to learn. When the war was over, and I knew I was finally going home, I didn't let any of you know the day that I would arrive. I wanted time to take it all in. I learned that home isn't just a house that you grew up in. It's that first look at Lady Liberty in New York Harbor. When your ship anchors, grown men wept. This, my country, is all part of home. Then your train leaves Grand Central Station and you're heading toward your hometown. That too is a part of home. The train finally pulls in and you signal one of the 2 cabs in town. There was no one to meet me because I wanted it that way. The driver, a man as old as Dad, said, "Welcome home, boy." Little did he know that although I still looked like a boy, I was actually older than he was in my soul. I gave him our address, answered his questions as politely as I could, and watched the familiar scenery bring me closer to home. When we got just down the road from here, I told him to stop. I would walk the rest of the way home. I paid the driver, took my duffel bag out of the cab, and waited while he drove away. Now I could look and feel and fill my being with home. I looked at the house, letting all that it meant to me sink in. The sunlight sparkling on Mama's clean windows, the porch swing that we fought over on summer evenings, the clothesline in the side yard. Now I hurried faster. I could see the lilac bush by the back door. As I came up the walk, slowly now I opened the kitchen door. It was as if time stood still. You girls setting the table, and Ma, I remember. Again, a long pause. He cleared his throat. The lump in my throat was too big to swallow. As Ma turned to see who came in, I said softly, "Hello, Ma, I'm home." So, what does home mean? It means all these things. The feeling of pride when you look at Old Glory and see Lady Liberty in New York Harbor, seeing children riding their bikes on the sidewalks, little girls playing dolls, and sweethearts meeting at Tripp's Candy Kitchen after school. Home. Home to us was not just a house, it was a home. That dear old house on Bedford Street where we grew up. Most of all, it means coming in the back door of that old house after a long absence and saying the words, "Hello, Ma, I'm home."
Hello, my name is Kathy Foy. I wrote this piece for the veterans in my life. My dad, who's right there, my husband, and my father-in-law. They're my heroes. Trek to the train. The moon shone bright on the newly fallen snow. I make my way to the train, the sound of my boots crunching as I go. My mind sings out the refrain, hi-ho, hi-ho. It's off to work I go. With one more quick look over my shoulder, I leave my home on the farm. This morning my folks somehow looked older. Still feel Mom's touch on my arm. On the horizon the sun starts to glow, glorious hues, gold and red, and rainbows appear in glistening snow as I dwell on what's ahead. My steps quicken unintentionally to a rhythm in my feet. These boots are marching quite naturally. Left, right, hear the beat. In the early morn, I take in the sight and make my way down the street. With heavy heart, I must do what is right, my destiny soon to meet. The sound of the train echoes through the town. Things sound different in the snow. Biting ice crystals whirl a raw wind down. 1 more mile to the depot. Hi-ho, it's off to work I go. I catch up with my friend with a grimace. We shift the packs on our backs, pull up our collars and quicken our pace. We're now in sight of the tracks. Through the bitter cold, silently walking, the time has come, we must act. No more to say, no more need for talking. We are enforcing our pact. Hi-ho, it's off to work we go. I smell the aroma of fresh-baked bread as I pass the bakery. The diner and barber shop fill my head with so many memories. A lump in my throat about what I'm leaving, my home and my future wife. I will champion what I believe in, though I may pay with my life. There's no turning back from what must be done. For our country we will fight, our family, freedom, and our nation. We will defend what is right. Hi-ho, it's off to war we go.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for coming. My name is Jack Talbot. I've been a member of the writers group for about 2 years, and I want to read an excerpt from one of my stories called You Can't Always Get What You Want, about a boy named Tom on a track team in high school. Like most teenagers, Tom wanted to feel special, to be a part of something big, and to achieve something that would set him apart. He had his share of high school friends, but if popularity could be measured on a 10-point scale, he would have ranked about a 5. To improve his status, he tried several school activities: band, where he stalled out as a second trombone; drama club, where he always had a walk-on role with a line or two, but never the lead; and the track team, where he was, characteristically, a marginal sprinter and hurdler. He came in second or third a couple times each year in dual meets, but never earned the 10 points needed at any given season to get his letter sweater. However, senior year was ending differently. Due to a mid-season injury to a teammate, Tom got to go to the local conference relay meet as the 4th man on a 4-man mile relay team. Because of the strength of the top 3 runners, Tom's team, the Wilson Wildcats, won the mile relay in school record time, and he earned 5 points as a first-place finisher, along with a 3-point second place for low hurdles in the dual meet against Montclair High, and a 1-point third-place finish for the 220 in the Plainfield dual meet. Tom had accumulated 9 points as of early June. With 1 more dual meet to go against arch-rival Bloomfield, and a little luck, he just might earn the 1 more point he needed. Every year, the Bloomfield Buffaloes fielded a top-tier track team, which regularly starred an individual state champion or 2. Wilson was traditionally strong in sprints and hurdles, while Bloomfield dominated the field events, such as high jump and javelin. That left the so-called distance races, quarter, half, and full mile, as the events that usually decided the winning team. Because of the scoring system, coming in first for an event was significant. 5 points for first outscored the combined 4 points earned for second and third place. To contradict Vince Lombardi, winning was everything. From the start of the spring track season that year, a sophomore walk-on named Marty Haslow had been a sensational surprise. Although Marty did not compete in cross-country the previous fall, he had shot to the top of the track team's distance runners, setting a Wilson school record for the half mile in his second dual meet. Being new, no one from the other teams, including coaches, knew Marty by sight. However, they all had a good look at his backside as he pulled away with a win or two every meet. The day of the Bloomfield Showdown, Tom hustled to the field house after school to see what events Coach Seitzer had entered him into for his final high school meet. If he was in his usual 2 races and got at least a 3rd place in one, Tom would earn the 10th point needed for a letter. He could visualize himself walking proudly across the Wilson Auditorium stage at the Spring Sports Awards program. But when Tom scanned down the assignment list, his name was missing completely. He kept checking the list over and over, to no avail. Profoundly disappointed, he turned and saw Coach Seitzer watching from his office doorway. With a sly smile and a wink, Seitzer waved Tom inside. "Tom, I have a special assignment for you today. You're going to run the mile." "But, Coach, I'm a distance man." You want to find out what happened? You got to buy the book.
Good morning. And if you're wondering who was the cop and fireman, that was me. I started off in the fire service. I wound up having a career in law enforcement. My name is Pat Cernine. I live here in Lakeville. And one story that I'm going to read to you is let me give you a little bit of background. I did not grow up in the country here in Lakeville. I grew up in the Bronx. Life's a little bit different growing up in city life. And I thought of this was I remember this as a child, so I put it to paper. It's called The Fire Truck. I was 6 years old and already wise as an adult. The new hook and ladder fire truck was the pride of the toy box in my 6th floor apartment. With a ladder that was extendable, it was just the piece of equipment every aspiring fire chief would want in his fleet. Phone alarm, fire on the roof, reported at 273 Beck Street, the dispatcher announced, as imaginary firemen scrambled for their position on the truck. Screaming across the living room rug, the new ladder truck took up its position in front of the couch. "Raise the ladder," was barked by the lieutenant as the truck was maneuvering into place. The stick, as it is called, easily reached the cushion on the couch, which was the pretend roof of the building. Imaginary victims were scrambling across the cushions to be saved. The fire being put out with no lives being lost, the ladder company lowered its massive 100-foot ladder back into its resting place. Shortly after, the apparatus returned to quarters, which was underneath the end table. This second piece that I have comes from a prompt. A prompt in writing is, if you have an idea and you put it in the form of a sentence, you can, from that point, design a story and put all sorts of action to it. This is called a different morning run. It was going to be a beautiful spring morning and a welcome sight after the 3-day rainstorm that had just passed us by. It had been a storm that traveled up the eastern seaboard and stalled over the New England states. It had dumped tons of water and produced some vivid lightning in the area. All one could do was to hope that the cable TV would somehow survive during the siege. Not seeing anything worthwhile watching on TV, I settled into a good crime mystery that I had been thinking of starting a while back. Somewhere along the way, sleep overtook me, and it was after 1 o'clock when I woke up with the book lying at my feet. I bookmarked the last page, closed it, put it on the end table. I turned the lights off downstairs and went up to the bedroom and was quickly sound asleep. I woke up early since I had gotten a good night's rest. Moving into the bathroom, I splashed some water on my face, brushed my teeth, and got ready for the day ahead. Full of energy, I put on a pair of shorts, sneakers, and a bright orange t-shirt and headed for my favorite jogging path. The scenery was beautiful. not a cloud in the bright blue sky. I ran along the river's edge and saw others out for a jog or riding their bicycles. After 20 minutes or so into my run, I decided to take a shortcut through the wooded area that I would often run parallel to in order to get me home faster. Running along at a good clip, my thoughts were focused on the peacefulness all around me. All of a sudden, I felt my right foot strike something hard and my balance being taken away from me. I felt my body as it seemed to move forward but downward at the same time. I was crash landing onto the brush-covered earth. The last thing I remembered was the pain shooting through my body as I had struck a half-submerged rock that brought me to the end of my flight. I had no idea how long I was out for, but I gradually woke to the sounds of voices in the distance. Slowly, my eyes opened and didn't recognize where I was through the blurry vision, but knew I was not in the park where I was moments earlier. It was dark except for some dim sunlight coming through what I perceived to be a skylight in the corner of this vast damp room I was in. Looking around, I could see the floors and walls were a chocolate-colored brown, and the air was seasoned with a musty smell. I looked around but could only see small animals in the corner near the area where the sunlight was coming in. I couldn't believe it, but they were conversing amongst themselves, and oddly enough, I could understand their conversation. There were critters of every size and shape, all sitting around on rocks and tree roots and anything imaginable that would work as a place for them to rest. I just lay there very still, not wanting them to know I had awakened. I couldn't believe what I was looking at, let alone listening to. I saw 6 or 7 rabbits in one corner discussing how I should be kept in a trap, and there were volunteers in the group that were willing to secure twigs and branches needed to complete this job. They were interrupted by 2 foxes who were suggesting that I should be set free. "We'll give him a 5-minute head start, and then we'll get out there and track him from opposite directions," said one of the foxes. "Then, when we circle around and have him trapped in the middle, we'll pounce on him and kill him," said the other fox. "He can't be set free, you idiots," barked the skunk from the corner. Every set of eyes turned towards the speaker. They all recognized that voice. The skunk was regarded to be one who was to be listened to because anyone who failed to show him respect was marked, so to speak. "You set him free now, and he gets away from you, he will go back and tell everyone about us. Then it will start. First, we'll have to deal with the paparazzi. After that, the government will be showing up with nets, and we'll all wind up in a lab or a zoo or some other terrible place. Do you want that? Well, do you?" They all mumbled amongst themselves. No one knew what to do. "If I might make a suggestion," I said, as they all took on a startled look and turned their attention toward me. "Now that I have your undivided attention, may I suggest that you all return to your normal way of life, and we never set eyes on each other again, let alone speak of this to anyone. For folks, and I use that term loosely, if you speak of this to any of your peers, you will surely be laughed out of these woods. There isn't a forest within 50 miles of here where you will be able to show your snout. I, on the other hand, will surely be as silent as a monk in a monastery when it comes to speaking of this adventure. For if I were to be foolish and speak of this morning's activities, then surely I would be the one in the net being tethered by a man in a white coat." They all looked at each other and mumbled amongst themselves. Finally, I asked my audience of confused, furry faces, "What's it going to be, folks?" Thank you.
Gee, give me a break. What acts to follow? They let me be in the group because they're nice people. I'm Linda Howerton, and thank you, everybody, for being here this morning. I've been with the writing group for about 2.5 years, and I'm going to read a short story, Memoirs from the White House, A Canine's Reflection by Bo Obama. Some of you may know that Bo is the first family's pet, and he's a Portuguese water dog. You may not know that according to Dr. Stanley Coren, an expert in canine intelligence, the average dog can understand about 165 words, more with training. Consistency is key, says Coren. But the most intelligent dogs, top 20%, can have an understanding of 250 words plus. I'm sure Bo is among those. His story is about how Bo uses his intelligence while on duty at the White House. His memoir begins. It was a hot afternoon, the first of the season, when the chief of staff said, "Too much electricity powering the air conditioners around the DC metro area will cause a power outage." By the end of the business day, it was dark, steam bath muggy, with humidity that had to be in the triple digits. Animals are unusually sensitive when atmospheric anomalies threaten. I hadn't witnessed such storms in my time yet. Now I get it, why they call them dog day afternoons. All of a sudden, a blinding blast streaked through the blue-black sky. "Is that lightning?" I began to bark. "Must be. It's terrifying." Rain fell so heavily the sounds it made pounded the windows, and it seemed as though they might burst open any minute. Then it happened. All went dark and completely silent. No humming, no buzzing from the office, or sounds of things being on. They were all off. My ears shot up to the strange silence. "The backup generators will kick in. Just give 'em a second," the familiar voice of my master reassured. More than a moment went by. No noise. It seemed like a long time, and still no noise or lights. "I wonder what's happening," the secretary asked. "I'll find out." And my master left the room to satisfy our curiosity and get answers. This would put everyone at ease, I could tell. Animals give off pheromones that can be detected by those like myself who are sensitive and know what they mean. Bursting into the room excitedly yelling, "Daddy!" 2 seraphim and cherubim voices exclaimed. The girls ran back out when they realized their dad wasn't there. I copied their speed, following after 2 of my favorite people in the whole world. Keeping up with them was not easy. The well-lit corridors were now dark, and the kids dashed into every room. Somehow I lost them. I peeked around a corner thinking they were playing another game with me now. This activity would keep them occupied and would calm them, so I played along. As I came into another room, I heard unfamiliar voices. I knew all the White House staff's voices, and these I didn't know. Could they be dignitaries visiting? No, I didn't think so. Nothing was scheduled this afternoon involving strangers, just the cabinet meeting. I always listened outside a door. I made it a policy to know about everyone coming to visit. It was my job. The stranger's speech was somehow disconnected, like trying to read the faces of humans when they were not saying what they mean. They didn't know I was there, so I listened. I didn't understand a word, but the tone was something that set my fur standing on end. I followed them down the hall and into a room where some of the staff were, and they began talking. I figured everything was fine since the staff were comfortable with the strangers. Nothing unusual or alarming was detected from their body language. I heard them talking about circuit breakers being broken and power lines being down, so I figured they were the electricians or someone here to fix the lights. But something still wasn't right. I wasn't getting any place here with my senses, so I figured I would put them to good use elsewhere. My keen sense of smell took me down the hall. My ears shot up to the low murmurings of different unfamiliar hushed voices. I slowed down and tried to listen as I approached. "Shh!" one voice demanded. Now, just inches from the doorway, the voice urged, "Quiet! Someone is coming!" I couldn't edge my body closer without knowing if I would be seen. The person could not have been referring to me, as I pride myself on my stealth and almost silent breaths. If it were not for the seriousness of the situation, I would have found it funny as I thought, what if they can see me? They'll relax because I'm only the house pet, not a human. What threat could a dog pose? Still, I shouldn't chance it, was my first thought. Then again, I needed to know the outcome that this interrupted silence implied. They might relax and then continue, and they saw what was making them cautious, just the dog. Instinctively, I moved into the room. My gamble paid off. "Just the mangy mutt," one of the staff members squealed reproachfully. What a strange thing for him to say. I thought he liked me. Everyone likes me. How odd. This one always pets me, when my master is around, that is. The man continued where he left off. "Now that the power is down, let's put the plan in motion." And I'm sure you're all on the edge of your seats, so if you want to know what happens to Bo, it's in the book.
Good morning. My name is Kathy Kernine. I'm a retired school teacher and have been with the group for about 5 years. The story, A Devastating Loss, is a tragic tale based on a family's horrific journey and heartbreak. It must have been heart-wrenching to sit in a Santa outfit, talk to young children after the horrendous tragedy he had encountered. Christmas is such a wonderful time of year, but sadly, not for all. Marge gave me some pictures from the past. I enjoyed looking at them, but one in particular brought back a story Mom had shared years ago. In the photo, my sister and I are sitting on Santa's lap. We had gone to see him several times. He told Mom I looked very much like his daughter. We stopped by often, as this seemed to make him happy. One day, as they spoke, he shared a personal story of unbelievable horror. While fleeing Poland during World War II, he lost his wife and daughter. Mom was so taken back, she invited him to join us for Christmas. We left after she gave him our address. She became very nervous thinking about what she had done. For a while, she thought he might come and kidnap me. He never came for Christmas, and we never saw him again. That was about 60 years ago, and I am sure he has gone to be with his beloved family. Thank you.
This is an essay by one of our newer members who is recovering from surgery. Then and Now by Marge Duncan. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses, yearning to breathe free. The wretched refuse of your teeming shore, send these, the homeless, tempest-tossed to me. I left my lamp beside the golden door. When I first hear the words vulnerable, I think of all the huddled masses who have come to our shore seeking refuge and the opportunity to live a good life. People come here to escape war, tyranny, and injustice, and they all have their stories. My ancestors arrived here from Ireland in the early 1800s. They came to build a better life for themselves and their families. First, they had to get passage on a ship. These ships were so overcrowded that people slept in huddles on the decks, or even worse, in the holds. The immigrants arrived malnourished and weak. One had to be a survivor to even complete the journey. When they arrived at Ellis Island, they stood in long lines hoping to make it to the quarantine area. The unlucky were sent back to their native land. Those who made it into the quarantine area were examined by a doctor who decided their fate. After being processed through Ellis Island, they faced the challenge of building a new life and establishing a secure place in a strange and often unfriendly land. They had to struggle to find shelter and employment. In these financially difficult days, we have a debt to the less fortunate in our society. The chasm has widened between the poor and the wealthy, and the middle class seems to be disappearing. The first cuts made to federal and state budgets are services to the poor, the handicapped, the elderly, whose main source of income comes from the welfare system that threatens to implode on itself from the sheer volume of its responsibilities. We must all help in whatever way we can to reverse the downward spiral that threatens all of us. Seniors have a wealth of life experiences to share. There are numerous volunteer opportunities at hospitals, schools, food pantries, local churches, nursing homes, shelters, or even senior centers. No matter how busy or disadvantaged we are, we can all spare as little as an hour a week. We owe this not only to our ancestors, but also to our current huddled masses to help solve these problems.
This next piece is a poem by a member of our group who passed away this past year, George Goodwin. George was quite a character. He'd come to our meetings with a guitar and was a singer-songwriter as much as a poet and writer. And see if you can't hear the music in this poem by George Goodwin. Morning Sun. Morning sun reflecting through the blind reaches its destination to light my mind, exposing thoughts of past left in the dark. Find myself lost, time to idle in park. A lot like a rotary, roundabout, emotions go on this familiar route. Road of my soul, to be closer to peace, a life of hardship, forever to cease. Why do I sit alone, wanting to cry? To ease pains I feel inside, to ask why. Tears of the heart seem releasing a love, one that's forever in the mind above. It's time to dry these worn-out eyes of gray, to move to new experience today. There I was, living each day in these times, a beginning, in the end, only rhymes. There is a reason for living the blues, to find a destination that I alone can choose, to open some doors left closed far too long, to express myself to others, a life in song.
This next piece is a story written by a former member of ours, Richard Rose. Richard Rose was a member of the group, and Richard has also passed away. An avid painter, from what I knew, but a composer of a great story. It's called I Am Winterfee. My name is Winterfee, and I am a Dutch warm-blood horse. This is the story of my journey from the Netherlands to Bandera, Texas, in the USA. I was born in Wapenveld, Netherlands, on May 12th, 2003, and was given the name Winterfee. All Dutch warmbloods born in the Netherlands are named by the year they were born in. For example, the year I was born, all the Dutch warmbloods have names beginning with W. In 2004, all horses were named beginning with the letter Y. They don't use X. The names follow the alphabet every year. The first year of my life was spent with my mother, walking and trotting in green fields and pastures. One day, when I was 2, a man came and took me away from my mother and put me in a training school where I was with other boys and girls. I never saw my mother again. I spent the next 5 years in the training school learning to have manners, walk, trot, canter, and learning beginning and intermediate dressage. Then one day in October of 2010, a beautiful young woman came to look at the horses in our stable. She wanted to find a suitable mount for dressage that she could take back to the United States of America. She saw me and liked the way I looked and moved and knew that I was the one she wanted. Adoption procedures were put into motion so that I would be sent to America. I left Wapenveld by an upper-class horse trailer and traveled to the airport in Amsterdam, Holland, only to find out that I had missed the flight to the United States. So I had to go to Germany for a couple of days and wait for the next available flight from Amsterdam to the United States. The flight is not an ordinary airline flight. It's a special flight for equines that only travel to the United States once a week. When I was finally able to board the airplane, I have a box stall with my own private groom who supplied me with water, hay, and sweet feed. He sat with me in my stall for the entire trip over the ocean to America. I landed at Kennedy Airport, New York on October 26, 2010. After disembarking, I had to go to a quarantine barn in New Jersey for 3 days. When I entered through quarantine, I began my long journey across the United States to Bandera, Texas. I left New Jersey in a luxury horse trailer that was heated and air-conditioned. A groom traveled with me. The first day took us into the state of Kentucky, where we spent our first night. The next day, after a long, hard drive, we finally made it to Warren, Texas, and a training barn where I spent the next 3 years. When I got off the trailer and was led into the barn, I was very happy to find that there were other Dutch warm-blood horses there who could speak Dutch. Now I have learned to speak English as well as Dutch, which makes me bilingual. If you want to see how the story ends or what goes on. And as Jack mentioned, another member of ours, George Goodwin, was also a member of the group, personally was a good friend to me and Kathy. George was our next door neighbor for years, and unfortunately, George became ill and had passed away this year. He wrote a poem called Mirror of Peace, which is a beautiful poem. I read this, and it's really fitting of his type of work. Mirror of Peace. As I look out across the still waters, reflections of life stare back at me, a beautiful sight. A certain peace fills the air as I reach towards the water, making waves and ripples. To still the picture, knowing stillness shall return when water movement stops to reveal the same peaceful life. It's great to see yourself in nature, a mirror to the world around you. A frog jumps from shore, a splash is heard. Ripples of water hide his descent to the clear bottom, just as the fish wander about feeding. No skimming stones today, it's too peaceful.
One of our members, Faye Davis, joined the group because she loved words. She said she couldn't write long stories, but soon learned she was adept at writing short stories, a relatively new genre called flash fiction. Faye Davis isn't here with us today, and I hope she'll join us shortly. I have the privilege of reading her story, The Shoe Man. I had been closeted with my fellow detectives till late into the evening discussing our latest case. This time it was a sicko who beat up on women and stole their shoes. His current victim was his third, and it worried the department that his crimes would escalate to a more dangerous level, as these crimes most often do. As I left my office, I was muttering to myself, why didn't I wait for the other guys? I don't like walking through this old mausoleum at this hour of night. The place was built 100 years ago, and I hated the long, ancient corridor that led to the parking lot. On top of that, it was raining out. The lot was as ancient as the building and was full of potholes. The fact that I was wearing high heels didn't help any either. It was because of the heels, the potholes, and the rain that I was paying more attention to the ground than to where I was walking. Suddenly he was there. Wow, his white teeth flashed. His dark eyes seemed to penetrate my soul, and for a minute I thought he might be the devil himself. Before my blood could completely freeze, I noticed he was wearing a uniform. A new security officer? May I escort you to your car, ma'am? He asked. It's kind of dangerous out here alone. Such dulcet tones, but still they gave me the shivers. Wouldn't a security guard be an older man? Here is a young, muscular male, almost 6 feet tall and handsome as the devil. Now my nerves began to overtake my mind, and my gun was not handy, tucked away in my purse. I began to perspire. I had been on this case a few days, and I already was becoming careless. Coming out here alone at midnight was not the smartest thing I had ever done. Is this guy really a security officer? I wondered. I didn't remember hearing that old Jake had retired. Surely someone would have mentioned it. So here I am, sweating and by now trembling as well. What have I gotten myself into? If this is really the shoe man, I would be able to identify him. What if now is the time he escalates to killing? My hands were shaking so much now that I couldn't get my key in the lock. The next thing I knew, he was leaning towards me, one hand on either side, pinning me against the car. He spoke seductively. "Are you cold, ma'am? You're shaking. Let me help you with that key." With that, he took my key and gave me a breathtaking smile. Without the car to lean on, I think I would have fainted with fear. Suddenly, I heard the click of the key in the lock. He opened the door, waved me in. "The next time you're coming out so late at night, call down ahead, and I'll be happy to escort you to your car, ma'am." Then he closed the door, waved me off. Again, his white teeth flashed. I smiled back with relief and waved so long. He may not be a killer, but he sure does have a killer smile.
This memoir, Miracle at the Beach, is a favorite of mine. We never would have guessed that a typical day at the beach would turn into an unforgettable moment in time. Sunshine, family, friends, laughter were all being enjoyed on that beautiful summer day. The calm ocean quietly slapped the rocks as each wave came ashore. Swimming was enjoyed by most as the temperature of the water was pleasantly warm. It was a perfect day. I looked up and saw Pat roaming nervously around, searching for something. I went over to check on him and immediately knew something major had happened. He had lost his wedding band somewhere, but where? Everyone began searching the area. It must be in the sand or on the porch of the beach house. As we looked out at the enormous ocean, we hoped it hadn't fallen into the depths as he swam. Sadness was filling the air when Dad thought of an idea. He had a metal detector at home. Perhaps it could help us. We told everyone on the beach to keep searching and informed them of a reward for anyone who found the ring. Pat and I left to get the metal detector. It would take about 2 hours, and we were hoping the ring would be found by the time we returned. As we arrived back, the sullen faces let us know it was still lost. We had the metal detector and big hopes as we slid into the ocean that was rising as every hour passed. High tide would soon be here. We needed to get going. The detector started up on the first try, but so did the strange sounds. There were so many minerals, it was finding everything. But the ring could still be anywhere, and this was not helping. We finally had to admit his ring was gone. I thought of throwing my ring in, but was convinced by others that I would regret it. We were all feeling so upset, but it was time for dinner, and everyone except for Pat and me were hungry. We set up the grill and brought hamburgers and hot dogs for my sister to cook. I sat on the cement step and we chatted while the meat was cooking. She looked up from the grill and started to speak and stopped with a confused look on her face. She said, "Kathy, there's something shiny on the ramp." I jumped up, ran to the water just as the wave was coming near. I couldn't believe my eyes. His wedding band had washed ashore. My sister had seen it just in time. We raced in to show everyone, and the entire mood changed. Pat, to say the least, felt a calm return to his being. I was thrilled to still have my ring. As we all looked out at the vast ocean, we knew we had help from above, and our prayers had been answered. To us, it was a miracle. And the ring is...
There it is.
Sheltered. It's January 1946, and it has been snowing for days. It's taken 2 days to clear the snow from busy Route 139 and another to clear the sidewalks. The town takes care of the streets, but our neighbors along North Avenue shovel the sidewalks in front of their homes. Most of them, anyway. A few snowflakes still flutter softly to the ground, laying a pristine layer of white on top of the old snow. It looks like frosting. The branches of the bushes by our front porch bend from the snow's weight, as if in prayer, and long icicles shaped like silver carrots hang from the edges of the roof. When the snow finally stops, my mother decides that we should take a walk. "We've been in the house long enough," she says. "Besides, I've run out of sugar, and I wanted to make a cake for tonight's dessert." I'm not yet 4 and full of bright ideas. Why don't we take the car instead? Oh, we can't do that. Our old Packard is still buried under the snow. Besides, your father is the only one that knows how to drive, and he's at work. So we get dressed, trudge down the porch steps, up our walkway, and onto the sidewalk. We head towards Bush's Market. Even though it's frigid outside, most of me is warm and cozy. I'm wearing fuzzy black boots, a full-length steel blue wool coat with fur trim, a white Angora hat, and matching mittens. Still, my nose and the space between the hem of my coat and the top of my boot is cherry red. My mother is dressed in the same shabby brown coat that she made long before I was born. Her gloves and scarves are so thin you can almost see through them. Every once in a while she shivers, but she never complains. The snow is tightly packed in tall mounds on each side of the sidewalk. It's so high my mother can barely see over it. It's like walking through a long, narrow tunnel. All you can see is white. All you can hear is the squeak of our boots. Mom reaches down to hold my hand. It's just me and Mom in a world of ice. You might think this sounds scary, but it's not. The war is over. I'm holding my mother's hand, and we're sheltered from the wind and the world. I feel safer than I've ever felt before, safer than I'll ever feel again. It's the way every child should feel, safe and sheltered.
So I'm last. This is the poem called Diamonds in the Sky. Let's go walking in the moonlight down along the riverside. 'Neath the magic of the starlight, come and lay down by my side. We'll go walking in the moonlight as we did once long ago, counting diamonds in the starlight, counting fireflies down below. As we gaze up at the starshine, won't you come, grow old with me, laughing at the sands of time, for the best is yet to be. In the magic of the moonlight, we'll go walking, you and I, counting fireflies in the meadow, counting diamonds in the sky. Thank you.
At this time, I'd like to recognize the members who are not here. Faye Davis and Marge Duncan are both in recovering, and we've already mentioned that we lost 2 of our members this year. I would also like to recognize today's readers. Kathy Cernine, could you stand up?
Thank you.
Linda Howard. Pat Cernine.
Thank you.
Jack Talbot.
Thank you.
Kathy Foy. One to me. Oh, did I forget somebody? Marge joined the group 3 or 4 months before I did. We've become really good friends. She sets the example for our group. She comes every week. She writes daily. She's just a wonderful person. In addition to that, she has published 4 books and is working on her 5th. Marge, this is for you. This concludes our presentation. I hope you enjoyed it. Remember, everyone in this room has a story to tell. It's never too late to start telling it. Thank you for coming, for listening. You were really good listeners, and for purchasing our book if you do. Thank you, Vicki and staff, for providing our refreshments, and Merry Christmas to all.